podcast for the FF Metrics site. We're going to be running this maybe once a week to talk about all the latest news during the off season. I'm your host, AndrewDFS, joined alongside me is RC Fischer from ffmetrics.com. Best fantasy football projections in the game, any handicapping advice, draft scouting, college scouting, whatever. Go there, check it out. Amazing content. And what we're going to talk about today, we're going to break down the Super Bowl, talk a little bit about the overtime rules, and give a preview of the college football scouting that's coming out on ffmetrics.com. So, RC, before we kick things off, anything you want to share with the audience about the post-Super Bowl life?
Well, since the Super Bowl was like 100 years ago, it seems, and not actually less than a week ago, we are working on all of the NFL Combine prospects. I'm going through previewing the players I have not seen yet. I have the Senior Bowl previews and post-event grades and player rankings from that basic scouting. Now we're doing it for the Combine for the players that weren't at the Senior Bowl. So those Combine rankings will be coming out to get us prepped for the actual Combine itself while we do the full scouting reports on all the top prospects. And soon we'll be getting into deep sleepers and FCS players and all that. Free agency, there's a million and one things. Just when I think, okay, the Super Bowl's over, I'm going to get a little bit of a break, then I make out my schedule for the week with time markers on it, and I'm like, I think I'm busier than I was when the season was going on. So with all of that, let's go back in history and talk about the Super Bowl.
Yeah, let's do just that. And before we do, I didn't give the best intro in the world. We're working on it. We're going to strengthen it throughout. But just be sure to subscribe to ffmetrics.com. Check out RC's site. And subscribe to the YouTube channel too, FF Metrics. Leave a comment. Subscribe. Like the video. We really appreciate your guys' feedback and following us and everything. But let's dive right into the Super Bowl, RC. This was the first ever Super Bowl in Vegas. And that city is made to host all the attractions and everything going on there. Like, that just seemed like a lot of fun. I had a bunch of buddies that went out there. They all had a blast. So I hope that the Super Bowl does return back to Vegas one day, which I'm sure it will since it's a new stadium. But we had on one side the Kansas City Chiefs, who represented the AFC in 4 of the past 5 Super Bowls. And on the other side, the NFC champs, San Francisco 49ers. They were, in 2 of the past 5 Super Bowls, so not bad for them as well. Obviously, they didn't win any of them, and they both were against the Chiefs. But they lost a close one to Kansas City in overtime, and it seemed to me, RC, that they were in control of this game in the first half. They only let Kansas City score 3 points, and after a freak injury to Drake Greenlaw, their star linebacker, it just seemed like they started regressing, and that defense that started off firing just seemed to take a step back. But RC, bottom line, the narrative here is the Kansas City dynasty. They did it once again, and Brock Purdy couldn't get it done against Patrick Mahomes. I think at the end of the day, all the other noise is going to be forgotten, and that's going to be the main storyline. RC, how do you see it? What went wrong here, and what are your takeaways from this game?
My first 3 thoughts out of the gate, my first thought going into the game was, I hate the Super Bowl. I hate the pageantry. I hate the end of the season. I hate all the hyper focus on every little detail. I hate the Gronk kick of destiny. I hate it all. Just like Larry David episode of watching the Super Bowl. Like, I'm loath to watch it. I'm ready to make fun of it and be aggravated by it. But I gotta say, it was a pretty entertaining Super Bowl to watch. It was one of the better experiences I've had watching the Super Bowl. Maybe because I set the bar so low by proclaiming for the 2 weeks prior how much I have disdain for the Super Bowl. But when I was watching it, I was texting the group and texting people that were watching along and texting along with me, like, San Francisco is going to win this game. They have come out hot. Purdy looks like He's been playing in 10 Super Bowls. He looks like Montana and Brady. This San Francisco's defense is on fire. Maybe my prediction of Steve Wilkes getting fired after the game, win or lose, maybe it won't come true because they're shutting out Kansas City. Kansas City limps into this game on a downer for their offense in the second half of the season. So my first thought was, man, San Francisco's they're on the verge of they're going to blow out Kansas City. But then as soon as I thought that, I'm like, I know from in season and betting on such things, whoever the hot team is out of the gate is usually the one that's going to stumble, and the other team, doesn't matter who the other team is likely to get themselves right back into the game, especially if the San Francisco doesn't take advantage of their early momentum. And I wonder if Christian McCaffrey never fumbled that ball and San Francisco just jammed that first drive right down their throats for a touchdown, if they wouldn't have won this game like 35-14 or something like that. But they couldn't score. I mean, 0-0 after the first quarter. Then when they got up 10-0, I'm like, well, here it comes. San Francisco is destined to win because they're just playing better football than Kansas City this day. And then it kind of all started to come, I won't say unraveled. It was anybody could have won that game. But entertaining. Either team could have won. Weird moments on both sides that blocked extra points and weird penalties and great catches at the right time. I mean, it was just a fun event. But anybody who thinks the Chiefs were the clear great team of this season, I still don't think Kansas City was the best team of the year, and San Francisco could have easily won that game. And if they did, I think we all would have said that's just deserved. San Francisco deserved to win because they were the best team in the season, I guess. If Baltimore would have won it, we probably would have said the same thing. But Kansas City wins it, and then we're like, this is a dynasty. But I don't think we see it as a dynasty by the numbers. Like you list off their Super Bowl wins in the last 5 years and their Super Bowl appearances, and it certainly has the makings of a dynasty. But I don't think anybody thinks this is the best team for last season. It probably wasn't even one of the two best teams of the last season. I think even Chris Jones said that Baltimore was better, that they beat Baltimore was the best team in football, and they just happened to beat them to get there. So is it a dynasty? I mean, it certainly has the makings of it, but this didn't look like a dynasty type of ascension season for Kansas City. This looked like I can't believe they got to the Super Bowl and won it season.
Well, it seemed like all season, RC, they were kind of struggling, right? Especially towards the middle, and they kind of like limped into the playoffs, lost control of the home field advantage. And then when they got to the playoffs, right, they dominated Miami, went on the road in Buffalo, and barely won, right? But they were seemingly in control of that game. They really didn't get pushed. In Baltimore, same thing. They could have lost that game, but they were in control of most of it. Again, didn't get pushed. But in the Super Bowl, they definitely got into a situation where, they were down 10-0. And then, for me, the turning point, and I gave this in the intro, was once Greenlaw went down. Before that point, I believe the San Francisco defense only gave up one first down. Travis Kelce only had one catch. And then at the end, Kansas City piles 25 points, right? Or I guess like it tied up 19 or whatever. So we'll say without the overtime, they threw up 19 after Greenlaw went down. And then Travis Kelce goes for 8 catches and 90 yards. So, there was the CMC fumble. There was the muffed punt. There was the missed extra point. So many things just went against San Francisco that if you go back to their Super Bowl 4 years ago, in Miami when the Chiefs and Niners faced off when it was Mahomes versus Garoppolo, it felt like Kansas City was the better team on that day, and they deserved that Super Bowl more than San Francisco. And this one, I can't say that San Francisco deserved it more, but it seems like a lot of freak things happened in this game that if we played this over same exact way, score 0-0, Greenlaw injury didn't happen, CMC didn't fumble, we play this game over 100 times in a simulation, I think San Francisco wins 60 of those games at least.
And even if it was a drive, and maybe they don't score that touchdown and Kansas City is dispatched, but there's the blocked extra point and he's not there. Greenlaw's not there to help stop Kelsey, and next thing you know, there's Kansas City showing up in overtime and getting the win.
I'm going to push one thing back at you, RC. I definitely don't think this was the best offensive version of Kansas City, but I think in the Mahomes era, this has to be the best defense that they fielded. And credit to their defensive coordinator, Steve Spagnuolo, who became the first coordinator to win 4 Super Bowls. So he got that early one in 2007 when he stopped the undefeated Patriots from winning a Super Bowl, and probably what was the greatest Super Bowl upset in NFL history with the Giants. Then he won 3 Super Bowls with Kansas City. But his game plan here, I mean, he hit it to perfection. Now check out this stat, RC. San Francisco only faced man coverage on 30% of snaps during the regular season. So on average, if you look at all of their games and postseason games before they played Kansas City, they faced man coverage 30% of the time. In this game, the Kansas City defense was in man coverage 64% of the time. So that's more than double. Spags was aggressive, and the 49ers didn't have an answer for this. They couldn't block those like free players coming at them. The one that's sticking into my mind is that 3rd and 5 towards the end of regulation, where if San Francisco gets that 3rd down conversion, they can pretty much run out the clock, kick a field goal, and the game would be over with. But instead, you have McDuffie running at Purdy unblocked, and it's just kind of like, Spags is aggressive. Kyle Shanahan, you're a genius. Like, why aren't you, maybe some of it's on Purdy not being able to adjust the protection. Maybe he's not mature enough to say, like, McCaffrey, instead of going on your route, you go McDuffie's probably coming at me. Maybe there's something there, but it just blows my mind at how they weren't prepared to handle cover 0 and cover 1 in this game, because they have the personnel to sort of expose that coverage.
And does Kansas City, by virtue of all of the wins that they already have under their belts, they have a longer leash to do more aggressive things? I wonder if a team that's won it multiple times, coaches that have won it multiple times, can call different games than the opposing side that's not only not been there. It's one thing if you've never been there. It's another if you've been there and failed and are probably gun shy. Maybe San Francisco got too predictable. Maybe they wouldn't come out of their comfort zone, in the second half. In the first half, San Francisco looked like they could almost do no wrong. Weird fumble by McCaffrey, who doesn't fumble. All those little things. But San Francisco came out hot. I mean, I thought Purdy was going to win the MVP going away, and he looked like there was not one nerve. The biggest one of the things I was curious about to see was, would Purdy, and I am a huge Brock Purdy guy, would Purdy struggle early because of the moment? And he didn't. He looked like he was the one that had been there, 4 of the last 5 years. But then all of a sudden there was the shift, whatever that shift was, whatever it can be blamed on, or several things to be blamed on, and Spagnola's game calling being a part of it. I just wonder if Kansas City had the freedom to pull triggers that San Francisco was going to be hesitant to do, because they didn't want to go back in time and not be questioned on it.
You brought up a good point in the sense that, Reed and Spags, they're playing with house money, right? They've won 2 Super Bowls. Even if they don't win this one, I know you're still arguing they're not a dynasty, but they're probably a dynasty in other people's eyes, even if they lose this, right? So then you have Kyle Shanahan on the other side. Like you said, not only did he lost Super Bowls, but he has that tag, which he couldn't get away from, that he chokes in Super Bowls, starting with his days as an OC in Atlanta, giving up the biggest Super Bowl lead in history, right? That 28-3 comeback. Not that it's all his fault, but he's tied to it. He gave up a 10-point lead against Kansas City in the fourth quarter in their first Super Bowl, and he gave up another 10-point lead, I think, going into in the second quarter. So I mean, like those blown leads are sort of associated with Shanahan, and it sucks because I think he's a good coach, but he's just going up. I mean, his 3 Super Bowls are against like elite QBs like Brady, 2 times Mahomes. Like those aren't easy draws. I mean, it's never an easy draw in a Super Bowl, but I mean, I know that I don't know where you stand right now with Burrow versus Mahomes, but for me, I mean, like Brady and Mahomes like are sort of like the 2 best QBs you can argue like go of the past like 2 decades, and he drew them 3 times in his Super Bowl matches.
Well, I think the Bengals are the 3-time uncrowned champions. So if we want to talk dynasties, could have, should have been the Bengals. They could have been a contender.
Yeah.
Thinking about the luxury of having won the Super Bowls and also the disadvantage of being uptight about having lost having never gotten there, made me think of 2 things. Maybe it is relevant, maybe it isn't. But when I worked in the corporate world for my job, I was a finance manager for a geography area of the country, and there was 9 of us in that job, and they had this rankings for different things throughout the year, and whoever's the top 3 in the company of I guess it was 12 of us, 12 area finance managers. If you're in the top 3, you got invited to this special awards ceremony in Arizona, and fancy hotel and a big awards dinner, and first prize was a Rolex. So everybody wanted, if you got a Rolex, it was like a Super Bowl. For us, it was like the Super Bowl ring. If you got the Rolex, you wore it to every meeting thereafter. Didn't matter what the size of the meeting was. When you had the Rolex, it kind of meant something, even if you were just super lucky. So I wanted that Rolex just like a lot of people did. So I made the top 3. The first year they announced this kind of ranking system. So I was, what clothes am I going to wear? You got to get a speech ready. All the big bosses are going to be there. This might be, good time to hobnob and make connections, and I got to be on my A game, and I was really uptight and really excited. And then I was in the top 3 5 straight years. So by the 4th and 5th year, I was going in there, shorts and a t-shirt and flip-flops off the airplane to the hotel. Like I been to that same hotel 5 years in a row. I was getting bored of it. I was getting bored of all the events because it was the same events pretty much in order. It was like I was loath to even be that. Like by the end, I was like, do I really have to? I got a lot of work to do. I don't even want to go to this thing. Like I already been there. I wonder if there was that level of comfort to a degree if you've won the Super Bowl, if you've been to the Super Bowl and won it multiple times. I know my mindset year 1 and 2 was completely different than what it was year 4 and 5. Also, like I was talking to my son about dating and first dates and blind dates and all that. For him, he's entering that stage, and we're talking about it, and I'm like, the first date I'd ever went on, I was a bundle of I was nervous and out thinking my wardrobe and all that kind of stuff. But after you ask the person and you go through the process, by about the 3rd or 4th or 5th time, then I was like, got to throw on some decent clothes, and I'm going to go and have a talk with this other human being. It's no big deal. So I just wonder if there's an advantage to having been there, done that for Kansas City, where San Francisco would have been the ones who, went on the first date and it was a total disaster, got stood up by the person, and now they're getting ready for their second date. They're not going to be as comfortable when the first date was a disaster. So I wonder if the mindsets have something to do with that as well.
I think there's something there, RC, and especially you're talking about. I mean, it's not like San Francisco hasn't been there because a lot of that team was a part of that 2019 Super Bowl against the Chiefs. But I mean, this
It went
Kansas
there
City,
and it went bad.
it
So I
went
mean,
bad.
you have to be uptight of like, oh my goodness, this is redemption. This is where Kansas City's like, we win, great. If we don't, I'll be in 19 more State Farm commercials
Yeah,
next month.
yeah, and they already beat them in a Super Bowl too. So they're, okay, whatever, we can do it again. But I think the thing that hurts me the most, like just as a fan and like just supporting Brock Purdy or whatever, not that I'm a 49ers fan, just I'm rooting for Mr. Irrelevant to do well. He played a damn good game. Granted, maybe he could have adjusted the protections better. I don't know what goes into that in when, a defense is called cover zero, cover one. Like, is it on Purdy to sort of make those checks and get the ball out quicker? Because Chris Jones was in his face right away in a couple of them. McDuffie in his face, McDuffie in his face. But I don't know who to really throw that up to. But I know one thing: Patrick Mahomes threw an interception in that game, and Purdy didn't. Purdy had no turnovers. He played a clean game. He did enough to win. And when he walked off the field, RC, when Purdy walked off the field, he was in the lead. Like, what more can you ask Mr. Irrelevant? Like, he did so well. And is he elite today? Is he top 5 today? I'm going to say no. Like, he's not on Mahomes, Burrow, Allen, whatever level. But I think he has the tools to develop into that one day. And I don't think when Brady won his first Super Bowl back in 01, he was considered a top 5 quarterback at that moment. He developed into it. And I think Purdy has his shot to do that as well.
I was just looking up something as I sensed where you were going. The funny thing about Brock Purdy, I think this just goes to the psychology of, as a collective in the football universe, the fantasy football universe, the betting on football universe, the main people are so tied to what the collective football people are saying about things, and the collective football brains have been doubting Purdy, and because of where he was drafted and because he wasn't hyped, the fans can buy that Purdy really isn't that good. But the thing about him for me in this playoff run is the Kansas City Chiefs, and I was just going through to look it up to make sure I was on the right track. You could argue that the best thing about the Kansas City Chiefs this year, what got them this Super Bowl, was their defense. They held the Dolphins to 7 points to start out the playoffs. They held Josh Allen under 200 yards passing in the second playoff game. Lamar Jackson's the league MVP, and he looked the worst of any of the quarterbacks except for Tua against the Chiefs. And then Purdy looked the best of all of those quarterbacks against this very, very good defense that we were talking about a week or two before the Super Bowl, about how the Chiefs defense was probably the best unit of all of the units. But yet everybody's thinking San Francisco had this great defense when they didn't. None of us thought so, but the public at large thought that San Francisco had this great defense. And I said that Steve Wilkes was bad and was the cause of a part of this, and he was going to get fired, and he ended up getting fired. The reverse of that is that the Chiefs their defense did not get the credit that it deserved, and that's a deep Chiefs team built mostly in the draft and free agency the last couple years, they have made some very slick under the radar moves on defense. And they just, if somebody goes down, they have a player at every spot. Pass rush, when Amenahue went down, I told you Karlaftis was playing out of his mind and there wasn't gonna be a big drop off. When Bolton went down, Stu Tranquil stepped up. They got Leo Schnell. They have deep cornerbacks. If something would have happened to Snead or something, they've got Josh Williams. They've got other guys. Mike Edwards, they got from Tampa Bay for hardly anything. Drew Tranquil, they got from the Chargers, who had a great season for the Chargers the year before. They got him for almost nothing in free agency. They just built up this depth, and it really paid off in the end. So Purdy having arguably the best game of Allen, Lamar, and Tua in the playoffs against them, to me, it says a lot about Brock Purdy. But I can already tell, I already see it, the fantasy football early best ball drafts and ADPs. Mahomes is the number one quarterback now, even though he doesn't deserve that by the way he played statistically output this past season. But now he's number one. Lamar Jackson's hanging in the top three, even though he's not been a top three fantasy quarterback in I don't know how long, but I think he's in the top 3 or 4. And there's Purdy at like number 12 and falling by the time we get around to it. And I mean, the articles I see this past week since the Super Bowl have been Miami should commit to Tua. Josh Allen is, going for payback this upcoming year. Lamar Jackson got robbed of his MVP season going to the Super Bowl. And then when it comes to Brock Purdy, it's like, we're predicting a surprise move that the 49ers are going to sign Kirk Cousins and trade Brock Purdy to where, I mean, that's what people think of Brock Purdy, is that they're going to throw him aside for Kirk Cousins. That is insanity to even think that San Francisco would even consider such a thing. I think only San Francisco and you, I, and Chris are the only ones who think that Brock Purdy belongs among the top 10 or so quarterbacks in the league. I think he belongs in the top 10. I don't think this is a Kyle Shanahan design, because when
Trey Lance couldn't do it. Garoppolo couldn't do it.
Trey Lance couldn't do it. Nick Mullins couldn't do it. Darnold wouldn't do it. And even Garoppolo, when San Francisco got far with Garoppolo, is them running the ball 700 times and Garoppolo throwing 14 passes. They limped Garoppolo to the Super Bowl. Brock Purdy is the difference between, if Brock Purdy doesn't appear, and credit Kyle Shanahan, I was reading an article, I don't know if you saw it or read it, that he was the one that went in and said, when their 7th round pick came up, said, I want to take Purdy with our last, when it comes around, I want to take him with the last pick. And all the scouts and all the personnel people told him he was crazy and that they didn't need another quarterback and they shouldn't waste their time on it. And I think he was like, well, it's a 7th round pick. We're going to waste our time with probably anything we take in this round. So why not? But I want Brock Purdy. So credit Kyle Shanahan. But if they talk him out of it, or if they had the power and didn't make that pick, and it's Trey Lance or Jimmy Garoppolo heading up the 49ers, we ain't talking about the 49ers in this Super Bowl.
RC, what's even crazier about that is not only did Kyle Shanahan want to draft him, but he even went as far as going to the president of the 49ers, I think Jed York, during that training camp and telling him, I know we have a lot invested in Trey Lance, but I'm letting you know right now, that 3rd string quarterback we have there, Purdy, is probably going to be our starter one day. He's like, I'm not going to shake up the depth chart. I know the investment. I understand the implications. We're not going to start him right away. And we saw Lance start out against Chicago in that crazy rain game, right? And then the game after, I think it was against the Texans, he blew out his knee, and that was pretty much it. But Yeah, I mean, Lance opened up as a starter, but Shanahan not only wanted Purdy, he recognized that he was the best QB in that training camp right away, which credit to him. He has an eye for talent. He knows what can fit in his system. He's not only taken Brock Purdy to MVP level, Mr. Irrelevant. He saw something in him, MVP level, whatever, but also Matt Ryan, who I don't know how you want to comp Purdy to Matt Ryan in in 2016 or whatever, but Matt Ryan was a
I'll
B
take
minus
Purdy.
quarter to take Purdy. I thought you would, but the point I'm trying to make is Ryan was a B minus quarterback all of his career. The one time where everything clicked with Shanahan, threw up an MVP type season and had one of the greatest postseason runs I think in NFL history.
And he was good before this. It wasn't like Matt Ryan was bad before that. Matt Ryan was good. He had his best year with Kyle Shanahan, but it's not like Shanahan took him from nothing to something. Um, so due credit to Kyle Shanahan, but he's living off of that when all ever since then, Garoppolo hasn't been as good as they thought. He thought he could take Nick Mullins and make him into something. He thought he could take CJ Beathard and make him into something. Then, for all of his genius, he's the one who took Trey. I mean, they traded. Just imagine if they didn't make that Trey Lance trade and they just kept all of those picks and were reloading their team with those draft picks, whether they traded them for something or whether they drafted great players. They really set them back. That Trey Lance deal. That was also Kyle Shanahan wanting Trey Lance. So the track record of Shanahan up to that point, up to Purdy, was getting rocky. And had Purdy never come along, and this was a Trey Lance year, and they went 9-8 and lost in the first round of the playoffs, and there was a big Trey Lance controversy. If that's what happened, Shanahan might be under the gun right now. We wouldn't be talking about Shanahan as an offensive genius. So, but because it's like when Nick Foles won that Super Bowl that you're talking about against the Patriots, of which Nick Foles Jimmy Garoppolo rode the 49ers, rode into the back seat of the car and game managed them almost to a Super Bowl victory with a really great team around him. Nick Foles single-handedly took the Eagles to the Super Bowl and beat Tom Brady with unbelievable performances. But because we don't believe in Nick Foles, then Frank Reich got jobs, then John DeFilippo, the quarterback coach, got offensive coordinator. Everybody was a genius because of what Nick Foles did. And then all those guys went and failed miserably, like especially Frank Reich. But Frank Reich got the blame, quote unquote, the pat on the head for pulling off the Nick Foles genius. I don't think Shanahan's genius is recognizing that Purdy was good. From that point on, this is Purdy carrying the team. And I say he's better than Matt Ryan confidently. I'm not doing recency bias on that. From the first time that Purdy was thrown into a game and I saw him play his very first game, I had seen him in the preseason and thought, wow, that's a lot better than what I saw in college. But okay, so Skylar Thompson played well in the preseason, and there's some other guys that played well in the preseason, lower level drafted quarterbacks. But when Skylar Thompson got thrown into games that same year for Miami, he was okay. He was trying to not screw up. But when Purdy got thrown into the fire, he was great, right? Like from the first series on, I thought, I can't believe what I'm watching here. And then from a fantasy football perspective, I jumped on that train as hard as I could. And then if you remember back to that time, I can't remember what you were picking during that time, but I think we hit the 49ers 4, 5, 6 weeks in a row because everybody was having Purdy at the 49ers as an underdog, saying the same thing every week. Oh, he's going to come back down to earth. He's going to come back. Brady's going to beat him and send him back to earth. You look at Brock Purdy's first 2 years, they are stunning.
Yeah, he's lost, I think, 5 games, including postseason and regular season. And I think 3 of the 5 that he lost, he didn't have Trent Williams or Deebo Samuel. So really, like, he's lost 2 games with them in, which is incredible. Like that, props to him. The things that he's doing at his like point in time, like as a quarterback, like can't say enough about that. But RC, speaking of Kyle Shanahan and his so-called ability to you develop offensive talent or whatever, people regard him as an offensive genius. I'm not disputing that, but
Yeah, I think he's in that realm for sure. But I don't think he took Purdy and breathed into his nostrils and created a quarterback out of nothing.
there was something there and he
Yeah.
molded it. Yeah. Okay. But now let's talk about his game management skills, RC, because he was a part of 3 Super Bowls that had blown leads, and he was actually, there have been only 2 overtimes in Super Bowl history, and he's been a part of it. And he made a seemingly controversial decision in this overtime. So for the audience that doesn't really know the new overtime rules, in the past, it would be that if the team that received the ball scored a touchdown, the game would be over. But after the infamous Kansas City Buffalo game in the 2021 divisional round, or I don't remember if it was the championship game, where Kansas City drove the ball in the fourth quarter with 13 seconds left, tied up the game, got the ball in overtime, scored, and didn't give Allen a chance to rebuttal, the NFL changed the rules. And the rules are as follows. Both teams have an opportunity to possess. So regardless, if the team that receives the ball scores a touchdown, the second team will have a shot at offense. What Kyle Shanahan said as his decision for receiving the ball first, RC, was he wanted the opportunity to go third, meaning that he wanted to take the ball, score, and if Kansas City scored and it ended up in a tie, then they would be in sudden death. And he wanted the ball in that scenario and wanted to give his defense a break. The opponents of that argument are throw analytics out the window. And RC, I'm an actuary. I use math and stats every single day. I have extensive training in math and statistics, but I know when to use my judgment and when to look at the stats. Know who's on the other side as well, because when you receive the ball and you score a field goal and then it's a do or die situation, you're essentially giving Mahomes all 4 downs. And you can probably tell by my tone which side I would have leaned on. But RC, am I overreacting to this? What would you have done if you were coaching the 49ers and you won the coin toss?
I would say you are overreacting, but I do get that I do get both sides of the argument, but I am way for the way that Kyle Shanahan played it. I would also want the ball third, because if I think I'm going to go out and, if you go out and score a touchdown, then you almost can't lose. I mean, unless they go for a 2-pointer, which they won't. They'll play for the tie, and then you're going to get the ball back third. Maybe they won't. Maybe they'll go for the 2-point convert, but you're going to win or lose. You're going to force their hand on the spot. If you go kick a field goal, then you got a pretty good chance you're going to hold them to a field goal, because they had been holding Kansas City to field goals a lot of that game. So I could see playing to match Kansas City, and then if that happened, you're getting the ball third, and then you're in the do or die spot. But to me, more important than any of that, like, I get that argument about wanting the ball third. I get the argument of wanting to have it second so you have a glimpse of what you need to do. But Kansas City just had their best drive of the game before that to go down and tie up the game. It was a 2-minute drive that took about 3 hours because with timeouts and everything else. Their defense was drained. I mean, it was a long game. The defense was getting drained. They were just on the field for forever. It's the first time, that last drive was the first time, to me, Kansas City really looked in sync as an offense. I wouldn't want to put that offense right that was just clicking. I don't want to let them go right back out on the field and have an extended same drive of what they just did with my defense potentially gasping for breath. So I'll protect my defense. I will disrupt. You want to keep Mahomes off the field. You want to keep Mahomes at a sink. So I keep the ball away from him because of what just happened on that final drive and try to disrupt it that way. Plus, be able to get the ball back third. Plus, be able to dictate, hey, we score a touchdown. We dare them to score a touchdown. We kick a field goal. We just got to make sure to hold them to a field goal. So I get the 50-50 argument in general, but then when you throw in what just happened on the drive before the end of the game, I want to disrupt Mahomes as much as any other strategy that there is.
Yeah. And, there's definitely, there are two schools of thought there. And if San Francisco had scored, right, the touchdown, and then the Chiefs matched them, all of a sudden, people are going to be changing the narrative on Kyle Shanahan and calling him a genius, learning from that overtime loss when the Falcons lost to the Patriots. Patriots got the ball first, scored the touchdown, and that was it. The Falcons never got a chance to, possess the ball in that situation. But for me, RC, I get that the defense was gassed. I understand that, but if I'm Kyle Shanahan and I'm looking at, my defense being gassed, and I want to keep them on the field, let them rest, catch their breath. The one thing that it just stuck in my head, RC, is by kicking that field goal, right? If you score a touchdown, that strategy works, but by kicking a field goal and giving Mahomes the second that they kicked the field goal, and Casey was getting the ball, I knew Mahomes with 4 downs would just figure it out. They would play aggressive. He would scramble on a 3rd and 1 or something like that, where, if he's playing with house money at that point, and I don't want to give a quarterback like that 4 times. I don't want Mahomes to have 3 downs. I don't want to give the guy an extra down.
Everybody says that. Everybody's like, oh, Mahomes is going to win this Super Bowl. Mahomes this, Mahomes that. Mahomes has not been that good for the second half of the season into the playoffs. And just think of how many drives they faltered on and had to settle for a field goal in this game. This is not those teams. So I wouldn't have been as afraid of, it's not so much Mahomes, it's if he's going to beat me with McCole Hardman and MVS, then God bless him. He didn't in the first 60 minutes of the game. My whole thing about the whole controversy is I get both sides of it. Whether it's a 50-50 decision, whether it's a 55-45 decision, you can see both sides of the argument. The people acting like it's so obvious what you're supposed to do are the ones that drive me crazy. It's like it's like fantasy football. You got two good hot tight ends. You got Dalton Schultz on a roll, and you got who else got on a roll? Tyler Conklin on a roll. And then you're like, okay, they both have decent matchups this week. Like, who am I going to go with? Conklin or Dalton Schultz? Like, so people will ask me that question on a Sunday, and I'm like, I don't know. I mean, they're both Dalton Schultz and Tyler Conklin. They've been hot lately. So the matchups there's nothing that jumps out about the matchups. So just go with your gut, but you can't make the Tyler Conklin choice and then watch Dalton Schultz score a touchdown and go, I knew I should have won. I can't believe you said, like,
yeah,
it's a close
revisionist
decision.
History. You're right, RC. There's a little bit of that too. Like, we're looking at the outcome and saying, oh my God, how could you do that? I get that too. And, just hearing you talk about it as well, I'm starting to warm up to the other side more than I originally did. My first reaction was to defer, but I get your point too. But RC, speaking of the Chiefs, speaking of Mahomes, not obviously having his best statistical season, offense not clicking. They're the first team since the 03 and 04 Patriots to go back to back and in Super Bowls and win. Now, something that's never been done in NFL history is a three-peat. And the Kansas City Chiefs have the opportunity to do that and basically set a new record. And if they do that, RC, it might, winning 3 in a row might trump winning 6 in total, because that is something that's never been done. The 49ers were very close to it, I think, in the 90s, where they lost to the Giants in the NFC Championship game. I think that was like was it Roger Craig that fumbled the ball in that game? I'm not sure. I'm not really that great with my NFL history.
I'm young. I don't know anything about that stuff.
Yeah, RC wouldn't know. He wasn't born then. But then, Dallas also had the opportunity to do so in the 90s. The Broncos had the opportunity to do so. No one, all those great teams, even the Patriots, all these dynasties you can think of, no one went 3 in a row. And RC, we know this offense needs help, right? So if you're now, I made you Kyle Shanahan in that other segment where I said, what would you do, RC, in OT? Now, RC, I'm making you the GM of the Kansas City Chiefs, and I'm going to ask you a question as the owner. Do you sell the farm to go for a Super Bowl, that not sell the farm, but I guess sacrifice all of your future, not all of your future picks, but a significant portion of your first round picks, extend out Mahomes the way the Saints would do it to Breeze, just push his cap hits out and go crazy in free agency? Do we literally sacrifice the future to go for what could be the most important Super Bowl in any franchise's history?
I will sell everything that isn't bolted down, and then I will unbolt those things and sell them to win 3 in a row. And
RC, it would be
got to. And then if you win 3 in a row, you try to win 4 in a row. And the second that it comes unraveled, when it all catches up to you, you retire. And you're a legend. So you gotta sell out for the 3rd year, and you hope you have the great negotiating opportunity to go to Chris Jones, to go to some of these players that are need a deal, and go, you got a chance to be a part of history, man.
Greatest dynasty ever.
If you wanted to break the bank with us, then we can't afford. It's gonna preclude us from getting the other things that we need. So we're gonna jettison you, and you won't be a part of the 3-time Super Bowl. So I will throw it back on you. What do you do if you're Chris Jones?
I have to. If I'm Chris Jones, I have to go for it. I have to go for 3 in a row. It's just too difficult. Here's the thing.
I'm going to give you a 1-year deal for $10 million. Let's make it 15. A 1-year deal for $15 million. Or if he hits free agency, the Chargers will give him. I'm just making up a team. The Chargers are going to offer him 5 years, $75 million. What do you do if you're Chris Jones?
It's so hard. If I'm Chris Jones personally, and I need to make that decision, and this is just me, right? I would say forget the dynasty. I gotta secure my family. I gotta take care of them. That's life-changing money, and I don't get paid the way Patrick Mahomes does to be able to sacrifice like that. But I do.
Jake from State Farm has not contacted me. I'm not in any of those commercials. And going back to my awards ceremony wins when I worked corporate, when I went back for the 3rd and 4th, I could have given a crap. I didn't even want to go. The travel and the packing became a hassle the 3rd and 4th time. I didn't really care about winning it again. Send me the check for the prize money that I was going to get, and I'll save you plane ticket money and hotel money and meal money. So if I'm Chris Jones, I'm not giving you a discount at all. You will pay me, or somebody else will.
And he's got 1 contract left, RC. It's not like he's gonna have 2 more. This is the bet. And without him, FYI, Like he was the one putting
Yep.
the heat on Purdy. He saved the Super Bowl there, and he was the one that also put the heat on Allen, throwing Deion Dawkins into Allen when Allen had Shakir wide open in the end zone. That could have changed the whole game with Buffalo too. Chris Jones, they didn't want to pay him during the offseason, but without him, I don't think they win this RC. I don't even think they come out of the AFC without him.
And then if I'm Kansas City, I'm like, okay, go get your big contract. We can't afford you. Our money maybe is better spent, spread around. And if we don't win because we didn't have you, so what? We just won. We're still a dynasty. I'm going to retire if I'm Andy Reid. If I'm whoever, I'm still going to go down as a legend, whether I got 2 in a row or 3 in a row. So, Chris Jones, you can go pound sand if you don't want to come back at a discount to try to win a 3rd Super Bowl because we got wide receivers we got to go buy.
Well, let's talk about other players, RC. L'Jarius Sneed, he's up for a contract too, who's a very important corner for them. If I'm him and I'm younger, I might do it. I might say, you know what? Whether it's franchise or 1 year, 10 million, whatever it is, I got to try because I could potentially get 2 more contracts. But if he tears his ACL.
Yeah, well, there's the AC. What if he tears his ACL? I'm cashing in if I'm L'Jarius Sneed or anybody that can cash in, because you could go through all of that gyration, and then Patrick Mahomes tears his ACL.
Yeah,
and
then
it's
what?
Over.
Yeah.
So they're going to be hard pressed to three-peat without Sneed and Jones. They might be able to. This was the worst of their teams that they've sent to the Super Bowl in the Mahomes run era. So maybe if they got a couple of wide receivers, they'd high score their way. They'd outscore their opponents instead of having to hold their opponents down via defense.
Yeah, if I'm like DeAndre Hopkins, for example, right? Why not take a very cheap contract, try to win my ring to solidify a Hall of Fame career? Because right now, he's borderline. I don't know if he'd get in at this moment, but he wins that ring and he's a part of it. He's a part of a three-peat. I know he didn't win the 2 before, but he helps the team get to a 3rd consecutive title.
It depends on how many paternity suits he has going on at any point that he needs to fund. So whoever it is, they could be a couple wide receivers away from repeating without needing Chris Jones. I'd put the money into Sneed. I wouldn't put it into Chris.
That was my next question. First. Who's more important? And it sounds like it's Sneed.
Yeah, because he'll be there. I mean, that's an investment in the next couple of years. Jones, they almost just let him walk away anyway this past year. So I'm sure they'll be even tougher this year. He's a year older. And are they going to give him more money than they did last time? I would assume they'll give him less.
If you're going to pay one of them, if you're going to give one of them a 5-year contract, 190 mil, whatever it is, right? You might as well give it to the younger kid that, towards the end of the contract, he might still be at an all-pro level. You give Chris Jones a 5-year contract, I promise you 3 years into that, they're going to be talking about how do we move off of this guy. He's just not going to be able to hold up. He's too old.
And it's not like they've got all this maneuvering they can do so that they can afford all of them. One of those guys is going to have to, but they could also do the contract with Sneed where it's, with Jones, it'll probably be a year or 2. With Sneed, they could do a 5-year and pay him $2 million this year, and year 3, $35 million, and then just renegotiate with them 3 years from now to break it up, spread it out some more. But to the sell your soul standpoint, they could structure those contracts to push the money into the future, like go for this three-peat, and then just realize there's no way that we're going to get 4 because they're going to be broke. Yeah. So put it all on the three-peat and let it ride. Then everybody retire and leave after that.
Let me ask you a question, RC. If you're Patrick Mahomes and I tell you you're going to win next year, but that's it, No more Super Bowls. You're going to three-peat, but you're done. Do you accept that if you're Patrick Mahomes, or do you try to go for the volume there and try to beat Brady's 7?
What are you saying?
So I'm basically saying that Patrick Mahomes gets offered a deal that from the football gods, you're winning next year, you're three-peating, but you're never winning a Super Bowl thereafter.
Oh, so his choices are winning three or winning more than Brady?
Not winning more than Brady, but having the opportunity to do that.
Oh, the opportunity.
Not guaranteed. No, not that you're going to win 8. You got to still go through it, but you're guaranteed to win next year, or you just let it all play out to chance. Do you accept it? But you don't win next.
Yeah. I just don't. Me personally, the three-peat doesn't really mean that much. I don't think Patrick Mahomes or Andy Reid's legacy are tarnished by not winning this third, or
no,
they don't go to some extra special level never been seen before because they won 3 in a row. Everybody's going to still think they're great. Nobody's holding it against Belichick or Brady or anything else. So if I'm Mahomes, I want the opportunity to do what they just did, to have the party in Las Vegas like they did. I want to be able to play every season knowing that could happen.
That's fair. That's a really good point. And why is that? He could very well end up with more than 7. You know, it might not be, his next one might not be with this iteration of the Chiefs, meaning like Kelsey and Andy Reid, whatever. It might be a different head coach, different supporting cast. That could be the next one. But I mean, he's got a bright future ahead of him, and I don't think they're going anywhere, even if they do have a Super Bowl hangover this year.
You can rebuild and retool, and for them to be able to win a Super Bowl with Mecole Hardman and Richie James and Marquez Valdez-Scantling and Kadarius Toney as their feature wide receiver group. If you're just a couple wide receivers away from being great again, that's about the easiest thing. There's like 92 wide receivers to take in this draft after round 1. Just don't screw up. Don't draft Mecole Hardman or Sky Moore again. Draft a wide receiver every freaking round of the draft. So hoping that you get 2 of them right.
Yeah.
Cut the other 5.
What's crazy to me, RC, is when the Patriots won their 3, right? Their last one in 2004. It took them 10 years to win again against the Seahawks. Obviously, they appeared in Super Bowls, but it took them 10 seasons to win their 4th one. So, you know, Kansas City could very well conceivably have that kind of lag time too. I don't know that they'll wait 10 years before winning their next one, but I mean, that's the kind of separation that the Patriots had between their 2 dynasties, because they're sort of like, I don't even want to say that they're rebuilding. They went through an era where they had Moss that they couldn't win. They had, you know, baby Gronk and Hernandez. They couldn't win that Super Bowl in 2011. And but yeah, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that this can go, but it's definitely going to be exciting to see if they can pull it off.
Can I end the Kansas City conversation with this question or statement? Question statement. Is the best bet of 2024 whoever's facing the Chiefs in week 1 plus the points?
Absolutely. Especially if that's Burrow. If that's Burrow healthy and the Bengals, I would love the points with that.
Even if they're playing the damn Panthers, the Panthers will be getting 20. I'll take the Panthers.
I don't know if I'd go that far.
You know the Chiefs are going to start out slow. Now, with this, they're going to be like, this is wake us up when it's like late October. Wake us up when it's Halloween, and we'll turn this thing on.
They better be careful. They barely woke up this time around. They sleepwalked their way in. They woke up at the end. But
yeah, this season was I don't know how the heck they got into this, into winning the Super Bowl. I never would have imagined.
Well, RC, speaking of big decisions at the front office level, you know, that Kansas City's going to have with, what to do with all their free agents, what to do in the draft, how far out, how much of the future are we going to sacrifice for this year? Another interesting decision that needs to be made this offseason, it lands on the shoulders of the Bears GM, and that's going to be what to do with the number one overall pick. So, while the Chiefs are trying to plot their third straight Super Bowl, the Bears, who passed on Mahomes, are still trying to figure out their quarterback situation. And here are their choices, RC. Number one is they take Caleb Williams, who's the consensus number one overall pick in the mainstream media. So that's the safe choice. That's the choice that would probably give Bears fans a lot of comfort and not put the GM under fire. So that's one. The second is trade down from that pick, and you either take a different quarterback and get back a king's ransom for that number one overall pick, or you keep the quarterback you have in Justin Fields. RC, now you're the Bears GM. What do you do in this situation?
Let me. If I'm the Bears GM, I'm going to make you the Bears owner. And if, as the Bears controlling owner, if the Bears, regardless of who the quarterback is, if the Bears don't make the playoffs, are you going to fire me and the head coach?
No, well, can I be a normal owner? If I'm the Bears owner, right? Like, I'm probably not rational. I want to see results right away. And yeah, if you give me a Bryce Young, you're probably gone.
Well, if you're considering the position that the GM polls and the head coach Eberflus, who looked like he was going to get fired around week 5, 6, 7 last year, and then Poles was under fire for all of it as well, when the Bears were 0-4 to start, 1-5 at a certain point. You were so close to flushing the head coach, and then probably had to think this general manager's on the ropes, because yes, trading the number one pick ended up making sense, but it would have been a whole lot better if you kept the pick and took CJ Stroud instead of being a moron that just followed the mainstream that would have took Bryce Young.
I will give RC Poles some credit. I'm going to give GM RC credit for not going with Bryce Young. Yeah. I know we missed on Stroud, but I think missing on Stroud, as great as he is, I think that's better than taking Young. Like, I will rank that decision of passing on Young higher than missing on Stroud.
I will say this. If I was the Bears owner, if you injected me as the owner in February, like now, a year ago, if you made me the owner and I sat down to have my meeting with Ryan Poles, and he said, I would simply ask him one question. If you had a choice at quarterback, regardless that we have Justin Fields or not, if we were an expansion team, whatever situation you want to put, you had to take a quarterback at number one, and your choice was Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, who would you recommend that we take? If he would have said Bryce Young, I would have fired him on the spot and replaced him. So, that aside, if the Bears stumble out of the gates again, fair to say that the coach is going to get fired?
Especially if it's the defense that's causing the issues and he's a defensive guy. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think
so. He's definitely under the gun. If they stumble out of the gates, of which you're the GM that backed them, didn't pull the trigger on them in 2023 when it was getting ugly, So you backed them, you stuck with them, and now we're a disaster again. Maybe so now we're definitely I'm making you fire Eberflus because I'm mad as the owner. The season winds up 7-10. Would you say that the GM is then on the hot seat for 2025?
Absolutely.
So I'm looking at this as like the Bears' power structure, Eberflus and Poles, are on some level of thin ice. They don't have the luxury to take Caleb Williams and hope this thing works out. Because even if they took Caleb Williams, do you think that a rookie quarterback, like he better be CJ Stroud, and he's not even close. Unless you got CJ Stroud, which is almost a once in a lifetime thing, maybe it's going to be the new norm, but if you get Caleb Williams, you're basically saying we're not making the playoffs in 2024. We're almost rebuilding. You got to give me a 2 or 3 year leash. If the owner was willing to do that, if the owner said, "Hey, if you guys believe in Caleb Williams, as long as I see progress, I won't hold it against you that you invested in our future." They can say that, but if Caleb Williams goes out and looks like Bryce Young or something close to it, and they go 4-13,
They're out.
and Justin Fields goes to Atlanta and wins the NFC South, they're all gone. So the worst thing of all the things that they could do is switch off of a known commodity like Justin Fields, who I'm not a big fan of, but I'm not radically against him. You went 4-2 to end the season. You were one of the better teams in the NFL to end the season. I maintain that they were better than the Detroit Lions at the end of the season. That if we started the season all over again, starting in Thanksgiving, and played a magical 17 game season from there, that the Bears would have won the division with Kirk Cousins out, with the rosters the way that they were, that they would have beat out the Lions and they would have won that division. So it's not like Justin Fields. You can't say, well, Justin Fields is not a winner. All of a sudden, Justin Fields was finding a way to win. I mean, they walloped Detroit. They beat Minnesota when it was important to beat Minnesota. It was a good team down the stretch. It has hope. If you're the coach, why would you want to break up that continuity? You finally think you're getting somewhere with Fields. The connection with DJ Moore is working. Your defense is starting to click. This Bears team intact has to be seen as a playoff team. But if they don't, they're all going to get fired. But if you bring Caleb Williams into it, you're definitely not making the playoffs. You're at risk of making that decision, and Caleb Williams better be money in the bank, and he's not. So they're all going to get fired if Caleb Williams stinks when they bring him in. Of all of the outs that they have, all the ways they can play their cards, the best way for them to play their cards is stick with what they know, get more draft picks for this, get more players that can plug right in and play right away. Don't get draft picks, and I mean they'll get some 2025 draft picks, but load up on 2024 draft picks. Or when you get a 2025 first rounder with your 2024 first rounder from whatever team, you can then turn around and wheel that for a player. Or you only deal with a team that's got multiple picks in the first round that they'll give you something to build this. If you're the Bears, you have got to get to the playoffs this year. And I think the best way to do that is with Justin Fields and multiple draft picks that they can fill in the blanks of whatever they think that the blanks are that need to be filled in.
But if
And
I'm the Bears owner, RC, and I see someone like CJ Stroud change life in Houston, and aren't I saying, look, you guys missed on not Poles wasn't there when they missed on Mahomes, but our franchise hasn't had an answer, a definitive answer at QB since probably like the 60s. Was it like Sid Luckman? I don't know if I got his name right or whatever. That was probably the best quarterback they had in franchise history. But I mean, now they have a person getting comps to Caleb. And I know you don't believe he's that guy, but I don't know if Poles and Eberflus and the Bears, the people making decisions within the Bears, don't see this guy as you're comping him to Mahomes, and Stroud just went crazy last year. Why wouldn't we invest in this guy?
I go back to the meeting that I have if I'm the owner. I have to sit down with the GM and go, what do you think we need to do? Tell me how good Caleb Williams is. If his career is going to be tied to Caleb Williams one way or the other. If he says, I don't think Caleb Williams is that good, I was reading reports off of Fantasy Football Metrics, and I just don't think Caleb Williams is the guy. We might as well trade this pick, and I don't think there's any alternative worth it. So we should get more draft picks to get more players. And Caleb Williams goes on to get drafted by whoever and is great, is the next Mahomes. He's done. If he has a CJ Stroud season, then Poles is done because he would have missed out on two opportunities. He would have missed out on Stroud and he would have missed out on Caleb Williams. So Ryan Poles better think Caleb Williams is it. He better know that for sure, because if he passes on him, it could come back to burn him. But if he endorses it, if he goes, we're going all in on Caleb Williams because I know he's great, and he comes in and he sucks, they're done. They're all gone. Eberflus first, Poles second.
So, RC, I think when I frame this question to you, I want to revise it. I want to revise the setting. Let's say you're the owner GM. You're making this decision for the betterment of the Chicago Bears. Your job is completely safe. You can never be fired. In your opinion, what do you do with that pick?
I trade it for more picks. I try to get, and one of those picks has got to have me in the top 5, 6, 7, 8, because I think there are a couple elite players in this draft, more on defense. I don't think there's an elite quarterback in this group. So if I'm the quarterback, or if I'm the GM forever, if I'm Jerry Jones, I trade the first pick, and I also trade Justin Fields, because I know I'm not going anywhere with either one of them, with either the quarterback from this draft at number 1 or Justin Fields. And I'm not going to pay Justin Fields. Like, I'll keep him around for another year at his payroll cost, but I will take whatever I need to do to trade. I'll see if Tennessee will trade me Will Levis, and I will try to see what else I can get for that number 1 or for Fields. I'll give you Fields for Will Levis. I'll give you the number 1 draft pick for Will Levis and your draft pick, Tennessee. You can have Caleb Williams. He's so exciting. He's so Mahomes-like. You want that. So if I'm the GM for the Bears for life, fans aren't going to be happy about it, but I'm going to bust the whole thing up, because we ain't winning a Super Bowl with Fields, and we ain't winning a Super Bowl with Caleb Williams or Drake May or Jaden Daniels for that matter. So I will punt and look for quarterback help someplace else.
I like that. But if there was a hypothetical trade between Tennessee and Chicago, just using last year as the comp, right, where Chicago in essence traded from 1 down to 9 with Carolina when they moved up, they essentially got 3 first-round picks. They got 2 future ones, and they also got DJ Moore, who was considered to have first-round value in that package. Now, if you're talking about somebody that has the Mahomes comp, and I think Tennessee's picking at 11 or 12, you might be looking, and this is why I love the trade down scenario. you might be looking at a historically great compensation package, like 5 first-round picks or something like that. I don't think we've ever seen a trade of that magnitude. I don't know if you're even allowed to trade out that far into the future, but we might see something like that if the Bears decide to trade down.
I was looking at Chicago's got the 1 and the 9. So if I could somehow have 2 top 10 picks and not take a quarterback if I'm the Bears and get all other kinds of stuff for my number 1 like they did last year. But I want 2, if I can get 2 top 10 picks in this year's draft to get a hold of some of these defensive players, especially that are in there, and then have a bunch of second and thirds to get load up on those wide receivers that are going to fly right under the radar because they can't all go in the first round. That's the route that I would go if I was the Bears GM.
And RC, I think speaking of all those defensive players that you like in the first round, you were talking about how you don't think any of the quarterbacks are going to really change life in this draft, at least the ones going in the first round. Do you want to give the audience an update on what's going on with FF Metrics with respect to what's upcoming with the NFL draft, your scouting, combine, or whatnot?
Going through right now and getting, I do not watch any college football. I shouldn't say any. There's drips and drabs I'll watch of college football, but for the most part, I really don't watch it because I don't want to watch it. I don't want to see it. There's too much going on to keep up with the NFL for betting and for fantasy. I know that my off season, as soon as the playoffs are beginning, then I start the NFL draft scouting process for dynasty rookie drafts, for prop betting, team betting. I mean, the work that I'm doing right now and the work that I've done through, now mid-February, if we go back a year ago, we were setting the groundwork for what was going to turn out to be the most profitable betting year I've had, because I was so confident in my Bryce Young scouting that we all bet Bryce Young. The Panthers were installed as a near favorite in the NFC South, and Bryce Young's touchdowns for the season were so inflated because there was so much hype. And I knew Bryce Young was going to be a problem. I didn't suspect it. I didn't think it was possible. I put my money where my mouth was, and so did you. We went hard against Bryce Young, and that paid off in droves. So the work that I'm doing right now is the foundational work of looking for those opportunities, not only what players are radically overvalued, Caleb Williams is not our number 1 graded quarterback for this draft. Marvin Harrison Jr. is not the number 1 wide receiver graded for this draft. I don't even know if Marvin Harrison's going to be in my top 5 by the time I'm done with all of the wide receivers. And it's a process. We go through just starting to go through the college football season, game tape, key player a day, plus going through and looking at all of the Senior Bowl prospects because they're the high probability top 100 picks in the NFL. So getting to know Senior Bowl players, then watching them during the week and in their game. But then we got the bigger board of all of the combine invites, which will pretty much be the NFL draft, getting to know those players ahead of the combine, then getting those results, putting them into our computer models with my tape scouting and our analytics, and merging that all together to start spitting out, and background checks to spit out grades and rankings and all that, looking for fantasy football opportunity, but also looking for the betting opportunities, whether that's things to bet on heavy from the new crop coming in, or things to bet against, like last year when we were all betting hard against Bryce Young, when that was a pretty radical, right now that sounds like, oh, you got lucky, or, oh, a lot of people thought. No, bullshit. Nobody thought that. Everybody assumed Bryce Young and Frank Reich was going to be a match made in heaven, and thus the Vegas odds on the touchdowns and the win totals for Carolina were ridiculous. So we blew those two numbers away. It wasn't like it was, wow, we sweated that one down to the wire, and thank God, they fell apart at the end of the season and we got in under the wire. We had those bets locked up by mid-season. So the work that I'm doing now, that I've done for 10 plus years, I'm building the foundation, re-looking at players that I've already looked at before. Like, I'll give you a Caleb Williams we'll take. So Caleb Williams was the first player that I scouted deeper. I'll spend a whole day researching their background, watching them in interviews, watching tape of them against their toughest opponents. Take their data, put it into our analytics system to see what the computer models are saying, and try to just get an idea of who we think this quarterback is, and file a report on what I'm seeing. So, okay, Caleb Williams, I'm not that impressed. But he's on the fence. It's not like he's terrible. He's not Bryce Young bad. But I'm more worried about him than I am thinking he's going to be good. But from here, that doesn't close the case on Caleb Williams for us. As I'm watching defensive players, like I was just watching the UCLA edge rusher Latu from UCLA. Watched him against USC. When I'm watching the defensive players, whether it's a day's focus on Latu and happen to be watching these USC games, or I'm previewing the cornerbacks that are going to the combine. So when I'm watching some of their quick tape, I want to watch them against the better offenses, the better quarterback. So I'll see Caleb Williams from all these different perspectives when I'm scouting his offensive linemen, his wide receivers, Marshawn Lloyd, his running back, the Pac-12 defenses that faced him. When I'm scouting the safeties or opposing linebacker, I'll see Caleb Williams 55 different ways from now till the draft. So if I see something different or I catch something different that'll change the scouting, we'll be changing the scouting right up to the draft. So right now it is all draft, pretty much all draft all the time, getting ready for not only betting on the NFL draft, but also entering those mock draft contests that we do to try to get be the number one mock drafters, number one draft predictors of who's going to be in the top 100, as we've been at or near the top for several years now. But once they get drafted, then it's time to break it all down for dynasty rookie drafts and betting on teams for and against. So all the profit opportunity to come, the foundation for that is happening with the scouting taking place right now and every day through up into the draft and through the draft, as well as looking for dynasty opportunities. We just put a major report out about the most undervalued buy low player. I think that's going to be, of all 2024, the opportunity is right now, and the window is very short as we're heading towards free agency. So last year about this time, my first major report was, here's the great opportunity to get Rachaad White. Go against what everybody's saying for the price. Go in on Rachaad White. And that was a pretty radical call at the time. But There's no days off for football, and I'm just looking for opportunities to profit on. I've got some best bets all ready to go. We just have to wait till Vegas comes out with over under win totals and starts knowing where these rookies went and starting to set lines for season totals, over unders. I've got my short list ready to go, ready to pounce, but we got to see what these teams are going to do in the draft, what their schedule ends up being. We know who they're playing, but we don't know the order and when they're playing them. So it is really no days off in football analysis. I'm not taking a break to go play fantasy baseball and fantasy hockey and basketball. It's all football all of the time. I'm going on vacation in a couple weeks, and I picked a hotel to stay at to visit my kids, based on the workstation that they have in the hotel while my wife is down at the pool. I will be half a day in the hotel studying players and half a day trying to get an ounce of sun.
Plenty of opportunities, RC, that are upcoming, and we're gonna help the audience figure that out. February, March, April. This is where you have those opportunities in the market and identify inefficiencies, such as last year when we saw Carolina, when we saw the Jets with Aaron Rodgers being overvalued as well. That was another one we were looking at. These are when you make those very profitable bets, because once the season rolls around, a lot of the good value's gone. So definitely stay in tune. Check out RC's website, ffmetrics.com. We thank you for listening. Please subscribe on YouTube, leave a comment, and we'll be back with more content in the coming weeks. Just because the football season is over, FF Metrics is still going. We're still going to roll out content and give you guys the best advice we possibly can.
I've got Bryce Young profits burning a hole in my pocket, looking for a place to spend it for this upcoming season.
Yeah.
I'm on that search.
There we go.
I've got my metal detector out, headphones on, and am walking the beach looking for that $20,000 engagement ring that got lost in the sand.
Yep. And definitely don't miss out on that, folks. But for now, we're going to sign off. Thank you all for listening. And until next time, have a good night.